Okay, let's have a talk. Just for a minute, let's have a talk. Now, when I work with my clients on their tax situation for any given year, there's always some drama, always some drama. And that's primarily because they do not engage or want to engage in tax planning. Tax planning is extremely important. And why is that? So let me give you this scenario. You're a 62-year-old man. You've got several $100,000 in a retirement account, and you start getting nervous for some reason because you feel that you need to touch your money and you need to have it available for you. So you withdraw $250,000 from your retirement account and put it into your bank account. Well, guess what? You just gave yourself an additional $250,000 of income that has to be now reflected on your tax return. So what's the problem? I told you I was going to tell you in a minute, right? So here comes that minute. You need to have tax planning. You've got to plan these things out. If you have a strong tax planning component, we can sit down and talk and figure out what your actual tax liability will be at the end of the year based on what decisions you're making during the year. So that means that we initially set up a plan for the entire year and then look at that on a periodic basis to see what's changed or what we need to change or whether or not you took out $250,000. Well, if you haven't taken out the $250,000, you can tell me, George, I'm thinking of taking out $250,000. What is that going to do for my taxes? Well, then that's when I key it into the program, the software, whatever we got going on that particular day and tell you, hey, if you do that, guess what? You're going to get a penalty for early withdrawal and you're going to have to pay taxes on that income. And then you're going to say, well, we're not going to do that. And that's the whole purpose of tax planning, but nobody wants to plan. And I understand that better than most because I didn't like to plan years ago myself. I hated planning. Who wanted to plan? I just didn't want to think about what I was going to owe at the end of the year. I didn't want to think about what my wife and I were going to owe at the end of the year. Well, that has changed. We're no longer in that situation. And it's extremely important for you to plan what's going to happen with your money at the end of the year. So are you going to place yourself in a situation where you don't have enough money to make the payment based on the crazy decision that you made earlier in the year? Or when we engage in the planning process, you left off something important. That's why it's very important that you have a person engaging in tax planning with you, asking the hard questions about what you're doing. Are you pregnant? Recently had a friend and we were trying to gamble and roll the dice to see whether or not the baby was going to come before the end of the year or right after the beginning of the new year. The baby came after the beginning of the new year because if they had come before the end of the year, that's a tax savings bonanza. So in other words, your tax professional cannot plan for your liability if you don't let them know exactly what's going on financially on both your personal tax situation as well as your business tax situation. It only takes a minute to go over, okay? It's a phone call. You make that phone call, you talk for a minute. Hey, George, guess what? I got a raise. It's a $10,000 raise and it's going to be paid out through the end of December as a bonus. So let's take a look to see what the impact of that is on my final tax liability. Folks, that's the highest level you can get in understanding what tax amount that you owe at the end of the year is to plan for what you owe at the end of the year. It only takes a minute every couple of months to go through and figure out what that liability is going to be so that you don't throw surprises. And then I have to give you extremely bad news that you owe, guess what? Now you owe $20,000 more because of that thing that you did with taking the withdrawal from that other account over there. So it's a concept of planning that works with all of the other issues that we've been talking about to create a system of what I call tax excellence, where you have no surprises, you've got no drama, everyone understands everything, your wife knows what's going on, you know what's going on. That's what happens. My wife and I have these discussions each year. We have to figure out what the liability of certain actions that occur on our investment accounts that's going to impact us negatively in the tax year. So it's very, very clear and obvious that tax planning can be a very good solution for you. And if your tax professional cannot engage in a serious tax plan or prepare one that makes actually sense for you, then you probably need to look for another tax professional. One of the things that we're working with in our firm is we're going to make sure that every client is mandated to have a tax plan, okay, so that we can actually very accurately predict what's going to happen and also guide them as they're making quarterly payments to the federal and state government to make sure. And then it's very nice. Wouldn't you want to be at April 15 and your tax professional tells you, hey, guess what, Bob? Oh, Bob, just give me one more minute. I just need 1 minute, okay? How would you like it, Bob, if I told you you owe nothing? We're going to file your return. You did your quarterly payments. You don't owe a dime. And guess what? You overpaid. So I've got a $1,500 refund for you. That's where you, as the consumer, should be. And that's what you need to have for moving forward positively with a tax plan and an implementation plan of tax excellence.